super long on these documents today. Yeah, as long as we get the main ideas, I think we're going to be good. And then we can move on to our weekend. It's the weekend, and we're going to be halfway through the semester, kind of more than halfway if you think about it, because we're not really having class, at least for this class. We're not going to really be doing class over Thanksgiving, like the whole week of Thanksgiving week. So that's like 1 week that we could just cross off the calendar altogether. It's going to be awesome. So, just a couple of documents for today to review, and then these will play into your next paper, which will be next week. This week you just have the quiz if you haven't done it yet. Make sure you do that. But we're in our Development of Christianity segment. I was a little disappointed in the book because the book does not have excellent documents on the founding years of Christianity. I thought that was pretty stupid. Like, you could draw from a bunch of different stuff, and then they chose these kind of really boring creeds and canons of the Roman Catholic Church. There are way more other like interesting to read and more enlightening, I think, illuminating documents on Catholic doctrine than this one. Nonetheless, that's what we have to work with. So by this time, a little bit of context, by the time that this document is written, the Catholic Church is becoming an actual thing. It is not yet legalized in the Roman Empire. We haven't quite gotten to Constantine yet. We're almost there. But nonetheless, Christianity is becoming an organized religion, and it is operating in some parts of the Roman Empire without fear of punishment. But the closer you get to Rome, the kind of trickier it is to have like a Christian church and not have the boot of the government come down on you. And that will change soon after this document, but we're not quite to the full legalization of Christianity yet. But instead, nevertheless, there's like a hierarchy of bishops, of clergy. There's lots of Christian churches spread throughout the Roman Empire, and they're trying to get their act together in terms of like, how do we organize this thing? Like, what do we do? Building a new religion from scratch is kind of hard. So like, how much of the old Jewish faith do we keep in? How much new stuff? How do we organize it? Who gets to be included? What do we do with people who used to be Christian and say they're not, and then they come back? Like, there's all these kind of rules that you have to hammer out. And that's what this document, in part, is trying to do. So, creeds and canons of the Roman Church. So according to this document, what is it? As you were reading this, and I trust that you've, at least looked through it, what are some of the rules that they lay out here? What are they trying to say? Okay, let's start with this. Primarily, who is this document written for? Is it for just like normal day-to-day Christians, or is it for like the leadership of the Catholic Church?
It's establishing like the leadership and the rules that they'll go by.
Yeah. It's mostly, it's built. This is a document that's laying out sort of the guidelines for the leadership of the church. Yeah, good, Gil. So what are some of the beliefs that they have here? What are some of the points that they make, or the guidelines that they outline? What are some of the things that you read about in here? Just in general, like, what are some of the points or rules or things that they're telling leadership to do?
Anyone who doesn't acknowledge Jesus as divine is basically a heretic and will get excommunicated. Yeah. And this becomes important in the Council of Nicaea, which is a little bit later. But there's still at this point, there are still open questions about like, how do we perceive the historical character of Jesus? Like, how does he fit into Christianity
which is weird because like this is a religion mostly built around the character, the figure of Jesus. But is he divine? Is he not? Was he born, a part of God, or was he mortal and then became God? And so there's lots of different viewpoints on this, and they're all struggling to become like the dominant one at this point. So eventually we get like the rise of the idea of the Trinity. We get the condemning of Arius, who Arianism is the belief that Jesus was not divine from birth, that he became divine later. And that becomes a heresy. So yeah, you're right. Like that's a big one that you pointed out there. Oh, what are some other ones? What are some other rules?
You should keep doing your customs as long as they don't really go against what you believe now.
Okay, cool. So this is a multicultural church. You do you, just as long as it doesn't get you excommunicated. When in Rome, do as the Romans, essentially. I mean, that's the concept. It's in a different context than what's in the Bible. But like, yeah, you don't have to become Jewish or like ex-Jewish or whatever to be a Christian. You can be Moroccan and be a Christian. Your local customs should not interfere with your faith unless they involve the worshiping of other gods or something like that, and then that's not okay. So good, yeah, this is a universal faith. Any other things that stood out to you in this, like other rules?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear earlier. What document are we looking at?
Yeah, this is the so page 216 is where it starts. The creeds and canons.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. 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 Any other things that stood out to you guys? I read this like 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to remember exactly what stood out to me.
There's like a waiting period. Like if you leave the church and come back, I think it's like a 3-year waiting period, and then you can actually like come back in.
Yeah. So that's one of the big concerns they have is like, let's say someone they subscribed to one of these other strains of thought about Jesus, and they got excommunicated. What's the waiting period? Like, what's the cooling off period before you get to come back into the church and accept the official canon? They have that. They have that also for people who like, it's considered a great sin to lend money to people and charge them interest. Like in the Bible, it specifically says not to do that. And that's called usury. One of the canons was like, well, okay, if you charge someone interest, what's your status in the church? So you get kicked out for a little bit, and then you can come back in after you've asked for forgiveness like 100 times, So there's all these kinds of stipulations about if you get kicked out of the church or you leave the church, when can you come back in and serve as a leader? And oftentimes takes, years. So this is they're policing the borders of Christianity already by the 4th century.
One thing I found very interesting is the first canon talking about, I find it very specific and odd how this is the first thing.
Yeah.
And it's talking about if you castrate yourself or you're complicit in being castrated, you can't come back to the church. But if it's done against your will, then you can, which I find odd.
And that's the first canon.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, that's a weird one. I'm not entirely sure what the historical context was that mandated such an urgent discussion of castration right at the very get-go of this document. But I guess it had to do with like there's a lot of talk about if you're a church leader, you need to be celibate. And that's still a thing in the Catholic Church, right? That for anybody here is Catholic, you know that your priest is not married. Or if he is married, and it's always a man, if he is married, he got married before he became a Catholic priest, and then he kind of grandfathered his wife into into the priesthood. But a priest is not supposed to be married. They're supposed to be celibate. And it was, I think in some cases it was considered cheating if you castrate yourself so that you don't feel that sexual temptation. Like part of the struggle of the priesthood is to wrestle with the human, the human condition and to suppress it so that you can show yourself as devoted to God. But if you castrated yourself, that was cheating, and not feeling any sexual impulses would then free you up to do other things. But there's no struggle there, so there's no glory in that struggle against the human body. I think that's what they're getting at here.
That's the only thing I can think of, unless it relates to like a specific Roman punishment. I don't know, because I know the Romans did castrate people. That was one of their punishments.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if they castrated you as punishment, then it's not your fault. Then you can be a leader in the church. Like, that's fine. But if you conducted surgery on oneself, then that's considered cheating. Yeah. So really specific, strange to us, but really specific canons about what leaders are supposed to do, including with their own bodies, but also the way that they conduct themselves in public. So, yeah, I mean, why though? Why do you think all these strict rules about leadership? I mean, this isn't even a legal religion yet. Why would they have this hierarchy, this like list of things that leaders? They talk about presbyters, which is like an elder in the church. It's like a member of a local church who helps kind of lead, but they're not the pastor. They're just like a senior figure of the congregation. Same thing with deacons. Like a deacon is another kind of senior leader of the church. Why do you think they're so concerned with laying out all these rules? Why even bother to do all this stuff? It seems pretty strict. Anyone have any thoughts on this or ideas?
They thought they were the like true religion. Like a lot of cults, even though those are like super messed up and weird, they have very like strict policies. And everyone thinks that they're like the main big thing. So it's basically like the same thing.
Okay. Yeah. So to kind of show that you have your act together, you need to organize yourself to show that you're legit. Here's all these rules that we came up with because we're the real deal. Yeah, I think that's I think that's a pretty good explanation for this. Why else? Why else would they be concerned about like the senior male leadership and like how they should, blah, 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 not be castrated and to not charge interest? Like, what?
I think it serves to clear up confusion about exactly how you practice the religion and what like who you have to answer to if you want to clear your name or join. It makes it a lot easier, and it clears up a lot of confusion to practicing people and to people who want to practice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, just clarity. I mean, having these kind of clear guidelines around this new faith. I mean, by the early 300s, it's not new, and we've had Christianity for 200 years at this point, but it's becoming an organized religion, like for the first time. So yeah, you want to have kind of a clear idea of like what this is supposed to be about, especially for the leaders. Like you want those to be a serious thing. And so, you need to Like if you're a boss, if you own a company, you know, and you just say, well, anyone who wants to work here can work here, you know, um, the type of leadership that you're going to get is going to be perhaps not the best. But if you have kind of strict scruples about who you hire, you know, to run your organization, you're probably going to have better luck. So yeah, this is what we're seeing here is the development of a young faith that eventually blossoms into a global religion that we still have today. You know, 1.5 billion people subscribe to some form of Christianity, if not more, you know, subscribe to some form of Christianity. And it didn't get there by accident, right? They started building these pillars of organization a long time ago. Okay, so, you know, I think that's mostly what I want to get across here. And you guys are like, Seth, Caleb, Ben, you're all over this. I think you guys have got a good handle on this. This is a church that's very concerned about how it reflects to other people. It's a religion that wants to grow and attract other members, and you got to be serious about how you put yourself together, how you organize things, and who your leadership is, and make sure that you got the right people for the right jobs. So transitioning then to the next document, which is the Martyrdom of Perpetua. It starts on page 202, so we're going back a few pages. Who was Perpetua? Like, who is this person, and why should we care? Yeah, do you want those stickers? Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm getting a sticker for my daughter. Here you go. Yeah, who's Perpetua? Who is this person?
She was like one of the first well-documented Christian martyrs besides like the apostles and stuff. Also a female, so that's pretty big.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, one of the first like major martyrs for the Christian cause, and a woman. I mean, how often do we read primary source documents about important women in church history? Hardly ever. It's interesting because like I didn't know about Perpetua at all. Like as someone who's grown up in this faith tradition since I was a kid, I never heard about her ever, and it's crazy to me. Like why not? I guess we're still dealing with a lot of misogyny and stuff in the Christian faith, but this is an extraordinary account of a woman who went to her death because of her faith when Christianity was still illegal, and that's an amazing thing. It's very unique in a lot of ways. So yeah, what visions does she have? She gets arrested. So the story here is that she gets arrested for being an outspoken Christian. This is an illegal religion because it's kind of tied back into this theme of treason against the Roman state. You know, Jesus was executed for being kind of a treasonous rabble rouser against the peace of Rome, the Pax Romana. And you're supposed to worship the emperor along with these other Roman gods, and Christians refuse to do that, so they get in trouble. So Perpetua is arrested for being a Christian and being pretty outspoken about it. What visions does she has a few in here, but like what kinds of visions is she seeing in this story? She gets all these visions while she's sitting around in jail. What were some of the visions, or describe one of them?
Seems like a ladder going up to heaven, and there's like swords and jagged stuff on either side, so you gotta walk carefully when you go up. Yeah.
How would you interpret? I can't remember if she interprets this one. I think she does. She kind of explains what this might mean. But what does this mean, possibly? A barbed ladder.
It ain't easy.
Yes. That's a very succinct way of, like, you're going to experience pain as you climb up your way to heaven. if you are serious about this faith and you're committed to it, holy crap, look out, because it ain't easy. Is she scared of this reality, or does she embrace this fact? Like, how does she react to this realization?
She's kind of excited about it.
Yeah, she's kind of excited. Why do you think she's excited about it? Seems illogical.
Probably the whole thought of like truth and suffering. Like, people don't want to kill a bunch of people who they think are in the wrong. They normally are like, well, they got a lot of points. They're pretty right. Gotta get rid of them.
Yeah, from the beginning, there's this. I don't want to get too off the rails here, but there's a long, strong tradition, and those of you who are also familiar with the Christian faith might sympathize with this idea a little bit. But there's this long running tradition in Christianity that like mortal suffering is temporary, but heavenly glory is forever. Like whatever suffering you experience on this earth, it's going to be reflected on you when you get to heaven. And in taken to its extreme, sometimes this means that people seek out suffering. As Christians, they're like, the more I suffer now, the more I'm going to be rewarded in heaven. That's one interpretation of it. But the kind of mainline interpretation is like, look, it ain't easy to be a part of this really weird, illogical faith that says when people hurt you, let them keep hurting you. Turn the other cheek. Pray for your enemies. Blessed be the meek. Like the things that Jesus said don't make any sense from a logical human perspective. Like you're inviting trouble on yourself by following what he says. But that's good because that's what God wants, right? So Perpetua is like, having these visions of hardship and trouble, and like she kind of foresees her own death. Like she knows she's going to die, and every chance she gets to repent, and like her dad is constantly saying like, hey honey, forget this Jesus thing and you're going to be fine, and she's like, nah, no, I'm good. Like that says a lot about her commitment to this cause and to this belief, right? So fast forward to the end, she dies. In what manner does she meet her death? Like kind of towards the end, the narrative shifts from being like a first person perspective of Perpetua talking about her prison life and her visions to a third person where someone is watching her die. How does this end? Like, how does she meet her death? And like, how does this whole thing play out at the end of the story? Is this a happy ending or a sad ending?
They end up deciding to kill the women by like sword, I think is what they decide.
Yeah. And then we have other stories too about Christians being like mauled by tigers and lions in the Colosseum, and like these really gruesome spectacles in front of other people. Like executions, were like a common form of entertainment. So yeah, killing these women with swords. She's a mom. Her child is probably taken away before she dies, but she's with her like servant who is pregnant, and she dies too. Like this is a really gruesome story. So why would this kind of story be memorialized and glorified in some Christian traditions? Like why is Perpetua just like, why do we care? Why does this matter?
I think it's an example of sort of what's wanted to an extent. It shows commitment that is desired for a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
You're willing to go through all the suffering, and if you are, that's good. whether you face it or not, make sure you face what is necessary to preserve your religion and yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. The martyrs are canonized as saints in the Catholic tradition. You know, these were people who were heroes, you know, and because they were willing to happily go to their deaths for what they believed. And this serves as an inspiration to other people, you know. Now things become easier once Christianity becomes legalized in the Roman Empire. And in fact, the Roman emperors convert to Christianity, and they start like, then a lot of this hardship falls away, because now, like almost overnight, Christianity goes from being one of the biggest outlawed religions to the religion of the state, like the official faith of the Roman government. And so things become different. Like organized Christianity takes a much different tone after a lot of the suffering is removed from being baked into the faith itself. But yeah, at this time, it's there to serve as an inspiration, as a story. And maybe that's why we don't remember Perpetua anymore. Maybe that's why I never learned about her in Sunday school, or really learned about her until I started teaching Western Civ classes. Is because like that element of like willingly going to your suffering is no longer an essential part of the faith. You know, a lot of Christians live sort of in privilege, being the largest religion in the world, and you know, churches are not taxed. Like there's a lot of kind of comforts given to the organized faith. So maybe that's why this isn't remembered as much. But in the beginning, it wasn't like that. You know, it was very different. And I suppose that's the point I'm trying to drive at here, is like this kind of document gives us a window into the early years of Christianity. And this, along with the creeds and canons, just shows you how serious these people were about building up a strong, robust system of belief, you know, in this project. Like people were serious. They were willing to die and be castrated, I guess, over these things, you know, which helps explain why it was so successful and why it carries on, you know, over the centuries. Anything else you want to say about these two documents? Anything else that stood out to you or you wanted to ask about, or anything like that? Okay. Well, guys, thank you for a robust conversation. I'm glad we have this kind of small elite crack unit of historical readers. You guys have survived the first several rounds of the Hunger Games, and now you've made it this far. So good on you. And you're going to be well positioned for your assignments by doing these things. Well, let me know if you have any questions. I'll be sticking around for office hours the next hour and a half. And if you have any questions about the paper, let me know. Yeah. Or not paper, that's next week. Although the next paper assignment is up on Blackboard, so you can check that out, and you can start working on it early if you want. But it's just a quiz this week, and if you have any questions about anything, let me know. I'll try and grade your stuff as soon as I can. I'm sorry I haven't graded this class yet. It's taking me a while. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye.